happy, what day is it? Wednesday, I guess it is, halfway through the week. I hope all of you are having an absolutely amazing week, productive week. I hope your printers are staying hot, they're moving, they're making money. Today's topic is basically an extension of what we talked about a few weeks ago. If you recall, for those of you who were here, we had Seraphine, who's our tech manager. He came in and went over a few different RIP strategy sessions. We talked a little bit about settings across a gamut of different topics, but a lot of you hit me up and the rest of our team up looking for the replay of that. And basically we're just asking for us to go deeper into the topic. And I see every single day people are posting in the group in the Owner Society, which if you're not in the FreeJet Owner Society, you need to be, because all of our techs and women, people are just dropping awesome knowledge in there. But people are talking and going back and forth about RIP settings and environments every single day. So this is a topic that we wanted to double down on. And as a result for that today, I wanted to bring in one of our senior techs here, Edsel, to just drop that knowledge on you. And so without further ado, Edsel, why don't you tell the crew here, the family here, how long you've been with the company?
I've been with Omni for 4 years, and I've been doing DTG for 12 years already. I own the machine myself as well, so I also have the machine at home when I do all this stuff. In fact, you can see some of the canvases and stuff I printed here in the back and everything. So
nice.
I go through this stuff with you, deal with it at home as well after work and everything. But I am the senior technician here, deal a lot with a lot of the cheetah support, a lot of the development for that. I'm part of the R&D team here now. I'm working pretty much full time with the R&D team now, just further developing things. I'm very involved in a little bit of everything. And like I said, I've been doing this for a very long time and a lot of experience with the RIP and DTG.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. I know all of our customers are going to appreciate it. If you are new to this, by the way, Creators Live is a weekly coaching session that we give to all of our customers as just for free. If you're new to this, again, this is a weekly coaching session. We call this Creators Live. We do this just as a gesture for all of our customers to keep you guys sharp. So welcome if this is your first time. But Edsel, appreciate that, man. What we're going to do here, we still got some people coming in. Why don't you run us through what topics you're going to be covering today from step 1 to 4, and then let's go ahead and jump right in.
Sure. A couple of things I'll try to cover. The original list was very long. Ryan said, "Dog, you're probably not going to get to cover everything." So I picked up a couple in there that I think will definitely help you guys out. And then we'll have that Q&A. So hopefully if I miss anything, definitely don't hesitate to ask that question. The first one that I think I'm gonna cover is gonna be just how to get a better white. I think a lot of customers are always asking how to get a better white. How do we punch in a little bit more? I'll talk about, some settings you can use on the RIP to really pack a little bit more white ink, which in return gives you a bright color on top of your CMYK. So we'll talk about that. How to create your own environment is something else I'm gonna talk about. So sometimes you guys may have specific settings that work for you. You're always having to change it every single time. So I'll show you how to save it and add it into your environments list. So that way it's always there. RGB versus CMYK. I saw someone post there on Facebook. They wanted to know a little bit more information on that. So I'll cover a little bit on RGB versus CMYK. And the last one I think I will be going over, it's a couple little ones, how to do the choke setting. I want to go over a little bit how the choke, how the highlight, how the fuzziness kind of all relates. There's a lot of confusing information of what the fuzziness is or what these certain settings do. I'll kind of go over that pretty quickly just to give you the right information for that and let you know exactly when to use those and when not to use them.
Awesome. It's going to be a hot lineup. Thank you, Edsel. Reminder, and I posted this while you bring up your screen here. If you've got questions, which I hope all of you do, write them down and save them for the Q&A session towards the end of this. We're going to do 20 minutes of live Q&A, and we want to make sure we get people's questions answered. So save them, write them down. We're going to try to move quickly through them as we get through the coaching session, but I want to try to get to as many of those as you can because I know the importance of the topic. So Edsel, just take it home, my man.
Sweet. All right, so here's my RIP there. So I already loaded an image. And the first thing we'll do is we'll just talk about how to get that white, the better white underbase in there. So I'll just pick the black environment, go back in here. One thing here in the fuzziness, I do like to always set it to 15. And then later on when we go through, I'll show you how to save that environment. All of this will default. The highlight, 60% is a good little punch that it gives you. If you want a real good punch on your highlights, and when it's talking about highlights, we're just talking about these white areas you see here. So anytime we're talking about highlight, it's always going to be visible white areas. So this outline, this little band here, it has nothing really too much to do with the first pass. So just keep in mind the highlights are just a little extra kick on these little white areas. So one thing I do like to do is I do like to punch it to about either from 75 to 80. That'll really give you an extra kick on these white areas and make these guys pop a little bit more. Now going up higher, to be a little careful because you don't want to go too high. Going up to 100, you have to keep in mind it's going to spray white and color at the same time. And if this stuff is if you pack in too much of that white next to it, it's going to start to bleed into each other. So just be a little careful. 80 is a max that I do like to set it to, even though it does go up to 100. But 80 is about the max that I do like to set it in there. So that's for the highlight and for these little white areas that you see in there. For your actual underbase, I'm going to go into the print setup. I'll go to properties. I'll touch a little bit on this white curve at the end here. Usually something we don't touch too much, but you can make adjustments there. Under the device settings, and we'll go in here, you'll see white underbase. When you have that selected, it's only going to adjust the white underbase here. 1440 by 1440 is the default. And then you see we have additional resolutions here. As you go up higher in resolution, it's going to slow down the printer and pack more ink into the area. So 2880 by 1440 is usually the next resolution we'll punch it into. And this one will punch in, I'd say, about 40 to 50% more white ink in there. So it is a good chunk of white ink. Generally, I always go back to the basics. If you're having to go this high, either nozzles are missing, pretreatment is not that great, but it is like a workaround for some of those little issues that may be lacking. Packing a little bit more white ink can help cover the shirt up a little bit better. So 2880 by 1440 is the next resolution. For the color, you notice if you go into color, you can also change that. Although once you're packing this much, it may be oversaturated. So you may have to come in here and move your color strength down now. So be a little careful, I guess, if you're changing the color part of it. Most of the time it is the white that we just changed over to 2880. So just remember, it's going to be a little bit slower, but it will pack about 40 to 50% more white ink into your print right there. And again, more ink means higher cost in your print. So you'll notice that as well when you're checking your print cost, it'll be a little bit higher in there. The other option is going to be this large drop size. So what this dot size is actually the physical size of the dot that fires out of the head. So this is small. So it's a really light drop that's going to fire. M is medium, and then large is the largest drop that the head can fire out of it. So by default is SML, which is small, medium, large, and it pretty much decides where to fire a smaller drop, where to fire a larger drop on its own. But you are able to just set it to just punch in a large drop size. So instead of picking in the small and the medium, you can just go to large, and now every dot that fires out of the white channels is going to be much bigger and much thicker. Now, what I don't recommend is switching this to 2880 and switching this to large. I think that's going to be way too much, and you may notice your ink is puddling. Do one or the other. If you go, sometimes I go to 1440 and I'll switch it just to large. It packs in just a little bit more. But if I'm gonna go to 2880, I do usually leave it at SML and go to 2880 right there. So those are some options you can do here to saturate the color more. Sometimes customers also like to add multiple layers of white ink. So sometimes they'll say, hey, how do I print, 2 layers? I want to print 2 layers of white and then just one color. There's an option here, to do that. You can raise it up for a couple of passes if you need to, but once you set it to 2, it's going to do 2 white passes and then the color on there. So again, this one will add more time to the print time. So just always keep that in mind. Some of these settings do slow it down a bit in order for it to be able to punch in enough of that white ink in. And then the last one here is, spoke about it earlier, is this curve. So this guy we create when we make these, we profile the printer. Basically this curve determines how much white ink is going to be laid down for a certain shade of color. So as you go to, let's say here it says darkest, which is black, it's basically not going to put any white ink in there. And as you go into a brighter color, for example, let's say this pink, this hot pink, it's going to pack more white ink. So you're actually able to slightly adjust this if you need to pack overall everything with more white ink. So if you notice here, it says gain. And if I start raising this up, you'll notice the curve will start to go up. And now overall, the whole image is going to pack more white ink in there. And this is without doing a resolution change. This is without doing even the dot change. This alone can also increase that white base. Now, when we profile them, we do profile them with certain shirts. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes some shirts will require a little bit more than others. They're all a little bit different. So this is the curve. You are able to make that adjustment if you need to. If you need to, go by 5, 10, 15. I don't think you should ever have to really go 32% or that high on it. But it is something you can play around with a little bit. Let's say you do end up playing with this, you're moving it up, give it a little test. And what you can do here is you hit OK. It'll ask you if you want to save this. For now, I'm not going to save it because I just want to do a test. So then I'll just say cancel. I'll hit OK. And then same thing, OK. And then just send this over to print and see what kind of result you're able to get. And if you need to punch in a little bit more, then go back in here and you can go in there. I mean, you can even have it punch less. If you need to, you can have it go down. It'll spray even less white ink, or like I said, have it go up. Test it out. Like I said, this one we don't really normally teach too much, but it is a little option you can do to ink punch in a little bit more white ink in there. So in there, once you're done saving, we are able to just save it to all the channels. In this case, we're just in white. There's only one white channel, so you won't be saving it for all of them. But try this one out. Try this one out. Try to just move this gain up here. You can actually go in here and individually adjust a certain point you want. But I usually like to just go and increase the whole curve rather than individual points on the curve there. Test it out. Like I said, if you want to try this, just punch in a little bit more, and it'll give you a nice, stronger base in there. So that's basically, I think, for the white ink. It's going to be the resolution. Your other option is going to be the dot size. This guy will punch in more if you switch it to L, and same thing if you switch it to S, it's less white ink. You have option to do multiple whites. So if you want to do 2 white layers plus and then just one color, you're able to do that as well. Or like I said, this curve. This one will probably be the last one that I tell you to adjust, but it is one that you can play with in there. And then once you close it, the software and everything goes back to default. So hit cancel here. Now, usually, I'll touch on the subject real quick. Usually, if you're having to punch in this much white, there's another issue. Either it's lacking pre-treat, nozzle check isn't 100%, or maybe your white ink is settled. Usually those two things, if any one of those two things is lacking, you'll have to move your resolution way up, or your ink consumption way up to compensate for the lack of pre-treat or nozzles, whichever could be causing the problem. So generally when I'm at home, I usually don't really change any setting. But again, I make sure everything's fired up good, and I make sure my shirts are pre-treated very well. But these are extra options. You can go in there and punch in a little bit more white in there. Now, when you get a good white, in return, you get bright colors. So it's like, I always explain like a highlighter. Imagine you have a yellow highlighter and you write on a white piece of paper. It's going to be bright yellow. But now imagine you have that same highlighter and now you try to draw on a gray piece of paper. It's not going to pop. You need that white base. You need that nice, strong white base in order for those colors to sit on top and make them pop. People always ask us, how do I get brighter red? How do I get a brighter red? Blues, greens. The white base in the end is what gets you the bright color on top. And then again, to get a good white base, pre-treat, proper startup of your machine there. All right, we'll move on here to the next one here. So how to create your environment. So let's just say some of you guys, you go in here and you say, I usually use dark, I usually send this to 80, and I usually have color booster. I'm just, making up a random setting that a customer may use. So, let's say you set this up and you say, this is what I always use every single time. This is what works for me, and I want to put this in my environment list. So we're going to go in here, print setup. You can see a little floppy disk with the word right there. So you see it says save environment. I'll go ahead and click on it. I'm just gonna go to the Qatari folder. Normally it takes you straight to the Qatari folder, which is where I'm going into right now. And then environment files. So normally when you hit that save button, it takes you here. Since I've done a lot of setting changes, it took me to another folder. But in here, we have all the environment files that are in the machine. So now I'm going to save it in here, and let's just say this is my Gildan setting. Gildan 2000 black shirt setting. I'm just making anything up here. So it adds it in there. Now I'm gonna hit OK here. And if you go to your list, you'll notice there's this environment now, and it has this crazy name. And we're gonna have to just pretty much name it. Right now it doesn't have a name. So we're gonna go to this little world with the wrench. And this is basically our environment setting box here. And I'm just gonna expand this. Now I have a lot more environments in here than you guys may have. But the last one, you'll see it has no name, and then it's not assigned to anything. So now I'm gonna go in here, and I'm gonna name it Gildan 2000 shirts. Let's just pull it in there. And then the last one here is pretty much what group do you want it to be in. When you click over here, it says 330TX Plus or production. You're able to select where you want this to pop in there. So I'm just gonna put it in quality mode. And then I'm gonna hit the little check mark. And then if I go to my list, there it is, Gildan 2000 black shirt setting. So now if this has all the settings saved that I always use, it may not be the same default settings that we provided you. These are the ones that work for you. Now you're able to pop it in there, have it in there all the time, and not have to go in there and click and change the setting, It'll be much faster going this way. So if you already found your settings, the ones that work for you for your shirt, you can add them in here and then have a final list. Now, whenever you do this, you don't want to close your software. So at the end, we have to shut the software down over here in order for those settings to save. If I just shut off my computer right now and don't actually close the rib, none of those settings will actually save. So just keep that in mind. After you're done with that, close the rib, open it back up, and you'll notice everything is nice and saved now. And you can do this with any of these same things. If I go with white cotton, I can make a Gildan 2000 white cotton environment. So you are able to make your own, add it in here, and then have your own custom setting that you have in there. And again, I just made the adjustments, went into print setup, floppy disk, saved it in here. Once it's saved, then you can go to your list. You'll find it up here, the weird name. Then you can just start naming your environment list, whatever you want. They're all in here, and add them in there. Sometimes customers do add a couple of different ones. They have some for Gildan, they'll have some for a Spectre shirt, this type of shirt, or a canvas print. Or sometimes people do a lot of canvases, so they'll have a canvas environment already saved, and they don't have to be sitting there adjusting all these settings there. But that's it. That's how you're able to create your own environment and then add it to your list in here. And then the last one, another one we're going to talk about is RGB versus CMYK images. This question came up on the Facebook group. And one thing is that even though the machine is using CMYK ink, you do want to have all your images imported as RGB. If you design in CMYK, sometimes in Photoshop, what I'll do is I'll design in CMYK and then in Photoshop, change it to RGB. So I don't see too much of a color change between those. But between both of them, the rip will take both. It'll take a CMYK, it'll take an RGB file. If you print both of them, you'll notice the CMYK file will be more muted. It won't be as strong, it won't be as punched in. And you'll want to make all your images definitely RGB. And if you're saving them in PNG, they're already RGB to be able to do that. But it comes up a lot. Usually what I tell customers is print one and you'll see the difference. You'll see a CMYK print versus an RGB one, and the CMYK print will be dull. It won't be as punched in. It may look punched in on your screen. That's one thing that screens are meant to brighten up images, they're meant to brighten up colors. Not everybody has the same screen as well. So some people's are much brighter, some people's are yellow. The color can be displayed completely different monitors than what it actually prints. But one thing that we'll do is I actually, this is a kind of like an older method of finding your right color, is printing color swatch. So this is one that we provide, we have them here and we can send these to you. But basically it's a color swatch. Sometimes customers want this blue, but this blue looks different on the monitor than what actually prints. And one of the things we'll do is when you want to really color match something very perfect is we'll print these swatches onto a shirt, scrap shirt. And these swatches actually have codes in them. They have the color codes and you're able to find the color you want and say, okay, this is what I want, and here's a code. And on the screen, it may look different. It may say fire red, and the screen looks a little orange. Again, everything translates a little bit different. But this is a cool little way that we'll use to really try to color match certain things. We'll print these swatches, and then you're able to find specifically the tone you want and make the adjustment to your graphic if you need to on these. So we do have quite a few of these blues, reds, greens. Sometimes people ask me, how do I get a bright red? And you can punch this guy's in, find the one that you like, find the one that is the brightest red for you. And then you're able to just copy that code and punch it into Photoshop and then see them. So see, they all have the codes in there. You just punch these into Photoshop, boom, that exact color gets in there. And now you have more of a visual of how it's going to print by using these color swatches. So it's a good little old school method, but it works great. I mean, we do have these, definitely call tech, and we can provide a whole couple files of these for you guys to test out. But always designs should always be in RGB to give you the strongest color. Without a doubt, in CMYK, you will see a lot of these colors mute down. RGB also has a wider gamut of color versus CMYK. All these things in mind, I've always used RGB for the past 12 years that I've used DTG. It's always been the best file type to use. And file types for PNG, a TIFF work, as long as it is an RGB file right there. All right. Hopefully I'm good losing anybody there. One of the things here I wanted to talk about real quick is this fuzziness. A lot of people confuse this, what it actually does. So this guy is related to the highlight here, right? So at 15, we're pretty much telling it that I want to respray the white areas. Pretty much these highlights, I'm telling you, hit those highlights again. Now, if I go up really high, let's say at 50, now you're expanding the range of what it considers to be white. For example, let's say I go into his arm right here, you'll notice there's white and there's this light gray. And if you punch your fuzziness too much, now it'll respray this area with white, but now it'll spray this gray area with white as well, because we just expanded the gamut of what we're telling you to consider to be white. It's pretty much like a range, which is what this is, the range of white. And as you go up higher in the range, the white starts to get darker and darker until the point where it's gray or black. So if you go up too high, what happens here is these little light highlights will actually wash out because you're putting white over them. Because we put this fuzziness really high, it shouldn't be higher than 15. If you go up to 20, 30, you'll start to spray white into this little area here and you'll lose that little detail. Keeping it at 15 will just hit the white area and not into these other lighter colors. Sometimes you have really light grays. And if this is too high, it'll think it's white and it'll wash out that whole color out of it. So trying not to go too high on this guy. 15 is really the max that I do like to set it to. Sometimes I see customers put in 20, 25, and you'll lose a lot of those little fine details, those really light shades and tones in there. And sometimes it's unrecognizable. You may not even notice it, but for someone who likes to, really look at a lot of detail in the image, they'll notice things washing out. And again, it has to do with this fuzziness. It should be at 15. Anything higher will, wash out some of those light colors there. So that's a fuzziness. Last one real quick I want to go over is this white underbase choke, because I hear this term get thrown a lot around and not used correctly. So whenever you had this white underbase choke, only thing this is doing is it's making your white layer a hairline smaller. The reason is because when you print white ink onto fabric and it starts to dry, it it actually expands. So it actually gets bigger. And then the issue that'll cause is when you print color on top, you have a white outline around your whole image that's not supposed to be there. And again, it's natural to the ink. So what this white underbase does is it's pretty much we're compensating for that expansion of the ink by just reducing it already from the beginning a little bit smaller, so that in case it does grow, it's not enough to show a white outline. So this is basically all it's doing is it's reducing like a hairline or two out of the edges of your image to just keep the white ink underneath the color and not show that white outline. So this is basically all it does. So sometimes people will just because it says white underbase, people will think it's related to the whole entire base. But again, it's not. It's just related to the edge of the base. It just pretty much shrinks it down by a hairline or two. And that's what it's saying right there, 2 pixels. It says within pixels, 2, that just means we're removing about 2 hairlines around the image. You can go up higher if you need to. Usually 2 is a good setting that we leave it at. But I just wanted to quickly go over that term gets thrown out a lot, and I've seen it not get used correctly. Underbase choke, again, all it's going to help you with is to reduce a white outline around your image that's not supposed to be there. For example, in here, you can see the yellow just ends. If I didn't add my choke, I might have the yellow and then a white outline around my image. Just keep that in mind. That's what the choke does. Definitely always add it. It'll help you eliminate that little white line around it. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood what the actual choke setting does here. So I'll just add it. But I think if you want to throw a little Q&A, we can see what people.
Let's do it, dude. That was super valuable. That's on seeing it on screen and having you walk through it. When you get a moment, put your email down in the actual chat bar so that people can send you an email or whoever to get the color swatches. I know we had a few people asking about that.
Yeah. So I'll put it in here in the chat for everybody, and then send me an email. I'll definitely get you guys the swatches. We have quite a few of them, and it's a good one thing that I do with those swatches. I actually printed them all out, and I have them hanging on my wall. So then by my computer, so whenever I'm designing, I can look up and say, hey, this is the color I want in here. Let me just punch it in, and I don't have to sit there and guess how the color's gonna come out. So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, Ken, Trudian, if you guys can email Edsel for him, so Edsel doesn't have to send individual emails out to everybody. That's how we're going to want to do that there. So when Edsel posts his email, y'all can just send him a message directly and he'll send it to you. So he doesn't have to send it to everybody else. Same thing with you, Vince. Guys, did you find that valuable? Put it get me in the chat. Was this of value to you? I know everybody's asking for a link to watch it and rewatch. Yes. Okay, cool. Great. That's the point, right? Because this is all stuff that you may or may not get in your training sessions, and we're working on improving those. But the goal here is that a huge foundational piece to your printing product is centered in your ability to navigate the rip and to know how to execute the strategy and how to make intuitive decisions around what settings to use, what not to use, all that stuff. Great. Keep hitting me up. Let me know that you like this stuff. Great. Obvious. Awesome. Thanks, Ken. Or Kevin, excuse me. Perfect. Okay, we got a few minutes here. We're gonna do some Q&A for 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna take the last 5 to talk about a couple of things. If you've got questions, click the little raise hand button at the bottom, and we're gonna go in live. I see a few in Q&A, but we've got a couple of people here with their hands up, so we're gonna start there. All right, Terrence. Go ahead. What's up, Terrence? Welcome back.
What up, man? What up? How you doing?
Good, Chief. How are you?
I'm good.
All right, what's up?
I was wondering, what does the color booster do?
Color booster. All right. So this one, I like to use this sort of for what it'll do pretty much is it'll saturate your color a little bit more by increasing like the contrast of the image. One of the situations where I do like to use it is I had a customer bring me a really old, washed out like photograph. It was black and gray, and it was really washed out. It was just really light gray. What I did here with the color booster is I started increasing it. What it did is it darkened up some of those areas that I needed darker because the image was just so faded, and it makes it punch in a lot better for the dark areas, for the dark colors. So try, if you do use the color booster, I usually go maybe 5-10% and not too much, because if you do go very high, you will notice a color change in there. And I guess really the best way is almost like for me to describe it is like when you go to Photoshop, you go to like image contrast and you start moving that contrast up. You'll notice the darkers get more saturated. Everything gets a little bit more deeper in there. Some of the brighter colors, you won't see as much of a change, but the darker areas, you will see them get punched in more. I generally, again, don't punch it in too much, but if I do, 5-10% is really the most that I'll kick it in there.
Awesome.
One more question.
Sure.
With pre-treating the shirt, does it have to be dry? Because like when I do it 20 seconds, then another 20 seconds, it don't feel bone dry, but it feels dry. And I had a white shirt bleed yesterday.
Oh yeah, for sure. You definitely want them dry. You want them all the way dry. If and again, it depends on the garment too. It depends on how much you're spraying. It could be 2 presses. It could be 3. The number there could change. So I guess don't always go off of just 2. You definitely want it to be fully dry because if there's a little bit of moisture in there, as soon as the ink hits it, the ink will just absorb into the moisture and it'll just start bleeding out into those areas. So you definitely want it, fully dry before you print it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, man. Thank you. Moving on here. Let me take a written question here, Edsel, from Trudy Ann, since she's not able to join with the mic. So she says, if the amount of ink is increased, boosting the white, for instance, does that change how the shirts should be cured? Or still 2 by 90-second presses?
2 90-second presses should take care of it. Unless you're packing a ridiculous amount of white ink, which you really shouldn't be. But like earlier I said, don't change it to 2880 and large. That'll be a tremendous amount of ink. It'll be so much ink that you'll probably lift up the shirt and it'll drip. So when you have that type of excessive amount of ink, yeah, the 2 presses may not work. You shouldn't really have to get to that type of amount of ink. But if you're just switching to 2880, it'll be fine. The 2 presses are just fine. It's only really if you're just dumping ink into it that it may not fully cure. And in fact, if you ever question it, one of the ways that I can tell is the ink will still, the ink when you rub it on your hand, it'll still feel oily, almost slick across. And you don't want it to feel like, you want it to feel nice and dry all the way through. I've seen that happen before where I had a customer who was, doing like 4 or 5 underbases and the ink just was not curing correctly because they just had a crazy amount of white ink on there. But if you just keep the normal settings or even just changing it to 2880, the 2 90-second presses will be just fine.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Esley, you are coming in live here. Go ahead and unmute.
All right. Hi, guys. Thanks for taking the time today to help us all out. My question is really around shutting down at the end of the day and then starting up the next day. So I've noticed I typically will always close my ink lines after I shut down for the end of the day. But sometimes I'll add some of the cleaning solution to the wet cap station when I close it. Because if I don't, it seems like it takes a little longer to purge the ink the next day. And it's going through white ink really quick. So do you have any tips on that, so that we're not maybe wasting so much ink each cleaning cycle every time we turn the machine back on?
Do you have TX or TX Plus?
TX Plus.
TX Plus. I mean, for the white ink, it also depends how long it sits in there. But with the Plus, you have the circulation system, so you're able to take care of at least about like 80% of the tube, the whole tubing system. The front part though won't circulate. So that's really the part that it'll be the most concerning for you to try to take care of, just a little section right there. Although if it does sit for a couple of days, you will have to prime it. That is just the nature of white ink. I'm sure you've seen it. You go away for a couple of days and then the lines almost look empty because the ink has already separated and settled. So if you're using it consistently every single day and pumping out a good amount of shirts, you never give the machine enough time for it to, the ink to settle. So then the next time you fire it up, those 2 head cleans is more than enough to get it firing. Now, if you're for sure not using it that much, I can tell you, yeah, you'll be wasting a little bit more to get it, flowing again. On the Plus, not that much. Like I said, it circulates most of the ink. On the TX, we don't have circulation. There's standard TX for that one. So that one you do have to push a little bit more through it. But really, in the end, it's just going to be usage. The longer the machine sits, like I tell customers, the longer it sits, the more you'll have to purge. You'll recover it back. It sits longer, so the longer you'll have to go through that. But it's pretty normal, for the white ink, it settles to give you the best print. You want to mix that up. You want to get it out. But usage is really the one that will give you less waste. The more you use it,
Sure.
the less you'll have to go through when you're firing it up.
Okay. And if you're only going to turn the machine off for 8 hours or so, do you still recommend closing those ink lines? Because it seems like what happens, print all day long, shut it down, go to sleep. The next morning, there'll be bubbles in the white lines, that then I got to purge it anyway.
Yeah, definitely after 8 hours for sure. You know, I mean, what happens is the machine naturally has backflow. So naturally the ink tries to actually go back to the ink bottles. And if you don't leave those clips shut, what it pretty much does is it sucks up ink from from your capping station, which is waste. And now it starts to pull it up. And if you leave those clips, open long enough, you'll actually see your like white tubes turn black because it retracted that much. So after an 8 hour run, or if it's going to stop for that long, I'd say definitely clip it and wet cap it. You definitely want to be wet capping it for sure. That way nothing happens to the head on there. But yeah, definitely wet cap it. Try to use it a little bit, more often. I usually, if it sits for 2 or 3 days, I for sure prime mine at home. If I'm cranking, a bunch of shirts tonight, and I gotta fire it up again tomorrow, I'll probably just do 2 head cleans after that. Now the bubbles, you mentioned something about the bubbles. If you're seeing large gaps, then that's a problem. And I'm talking about 1 inch, 2 inch, gaps, really large chunks of gaps. If you're seeing small little bubbles, I guess don't be too concerned about that. I don't want you to just be blowing through ink because you see those little bubbles. Our damper actually works very well to eliminate these little bubbles. So as soon as it goes into the damper, it pretty much pops and only ink goes through. So don't be too concerned. Sometimes people tell me like, oh, I've been priming it, and it's a little bubble. That's really not going to give you an issue. Now, if there's a large gap, that will give you an issue there. So don't be too crazy about the little bubbles. Sometimes people will really be pumping out a lot of ink just for that little bubble that is really not going to give you an issue. In fact, I mean, if I check mine at home, I'm sure I got a bubble here and there on my wipe.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Esley. Appreciate it. Okay. So again, we've got 5.5 minutes to go through a couple more questions. So I'm going to rattle a few off. If you've got a question that you want to answer live, now's your last chance. Click raise hand at the bottom and let's get it going. Scott says, what is the best rip setting for printing photos on the TX?
So you're gonna have that photo section. So you're gonna have the photo environment, and that one is actually designed to give you a softer tone. What are these other environments like black media, dark media? They're designed to give those colors a pop, give them more saturation. But with skin tones, you don't want that. You want a nice soft tone. So we usually will stick with the TX photo environment. And usually these are only for the standard TX. So if you have a plus, you may not see this one, but we can get it in there if you want to. But here are the options. You can see TX photo is really going to be the best one to give you like the best skin tone. Pastels, when you're printing really soft pastels, things like that, you want them to stay soft. You want them to stay a soft color. So you want to use this TX photo environment for that. And like I said, for the plus users, if you don't have it, we can also add that in there for you. And then you can have these options. And then you'll notice there's no poly options for this because this is designed for the regular TX that doesn't print poly. But they work just fine with the plus. So these are the ones you want to use for photographs to give you like really the best skin tone right there.
Awesome. Thank you. Colorbound, you are coming in hot. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello?
What's going on?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's your name?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I've got 2 quick questions. The first one is, if you see on the top, on the QRAP, on the top, you'll see the percentage 100%, 100, the underbase and choke and so on. When do we use that?
All right.
That's the first question.
So I guess the only one that I would maybe adjust there would be the underbase percentage. And it's just like how it sounds. It's basically how much white ink you're firing out. So right now we have it at 100 because we want to give you the strongest and most solid white base. But the only time, let's say that I consider moving my underbase down is either when I'm printing on something very thin piece of fabric or something like that. It can't absorb or hold that much ink. So you don't want to pack that much into it. So you want to start moving this down. On a regular t-shirt though, if you start moving this down, you'll notice these white areas won't be as solid. So the only time I'll move it is if I'm printing on a substrate or on a medium that I know cannot pack or hold that much ink. For example, let's say the color string. I'll move that when I'm doing a canvas. I can't do it at 100%. I'll do that to 30 because they can't hold that much. Same thing with the underbase. It pretty much, if you find that you're printing and the ink is like pooling, you can see little puddles of ink in there, of white ink. You can actually start dropping this down to gently reduce the white base. I think most people want more white ink or a stronger white base. So I think most people don't move this too much. But the only time I do move it is going to be when I know I'm printing on something, on a substrate or medium that I know cannot hold this much, or even on a piece of paper or something. Or DTF, a lot of you guys are starting to do DTF, the direct to transfers. Those type of transfer papers, you will not be able to pack 100% underbase, in there. So you'll have to lower that down.
Okay. My second question is on my TX. I have TX Plus. So when you go to the environment, there is a photo on just regular TX, but on the TX Plus, I believe during my training we got rid of it. So is it okay to do with the regular TX photo, or do I have to re-import it, do it with the TX Plus photo?
No, you can use the TX photo. I mean, originally it was designed for just a standard TX, but it works well with the plus inks as well. Different inks, but it worked well with it. You still get the nice soft tone. For those of you that don't have this, let's say you have a plus and you don't have this, because we normally remove this from your settings, the ones you don't need. You can go in here, little world right here, and then there's a little reset environments to default. So you see this little arrow going to circle and it says reset. If you click on that, boom, everything will go back to exactly how I have it. So you'll have, all of this stuff in here, the extra options as well. So everyone technically has them already installed. We just actually remove them so it's not so cluttered in there as well. But just set this little reset and boom, everything comes back.
All right. Thank you for very much for the opportunity. And I really like the training, and I hope we're going to be continuing this. And thumbs up. Thank you.
Every week.
Awesome.
See you next week. All right. We're going to get through two more, Nate and Rick, but we got to be quick here, Nate and Rick. So let's have good, straightforward questions, and then Edsel, we'll get you some answers here, and then we've got a couple things to close out on. So Nate, you, sir, can now unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, I screen print also. So I have a Economax M&R dryer. When we screen print, when we're curing them, they'll come out at 310 to 320. With the OmniPrint, what do I need to be watching for when we're curing shirts through a dryer versus the heat press?
We generally will always recommend to use a forced air dryer. That really works the best to be able to cure DTG water-based things. You need that forced air to be able to actually fully evaporate all the water out of the ink. Ideally, you want the ink to be reaching between 320 and 330 degrees on there, but that's really, I guess, the only part for that is, I can tell every customer, if you're going to be using an IR dryer, people screen print, they already have those. Run them through. Again, the ink has to reach about 320 degrees, and I will still have customers wash test them. Even when we set them up here, when we're setting up customers, run it through. If you're using a laser thermometer, you're able to scan it, see it's reaching the appropriate temperature, then still give it a wash. As far as the running them through a dryer, not much difference. You're running through. The time we use for our BBC Aeolus is 2 minutes. We dry them for 2 minutes on the forced air dryer. That reaches it to about 320 degrees. The temperatures are much different. I think we're using screen print. Our temperatures we set them at is 660 degrees and then 500 degrees. But even with those large numbers of temperature, it still just reaches 320 degrees. So just to be the best thing there is in the end is the wash test. So run it through running through the dryer will give you more of that screen print feel, which I think sometimes people want that. But other than that, do the wash test. So make sure it's reaching the temperature, wash it, it's holding, you're good.
Okay. One other question I have is when we're doing this, it seems like when we're pre-treating them, how do you know you're getting enough pre-treatment down with because I have the dual direct treater.
Mhm.
So I'm running it over 2 passes, but it's not always spraying evenly.
That nozzle, check the nozzle, man.
I ordered a new nozzle, man.
Yeah, you definitely, one thing that I'll recommend for everybody is order some extras, because like I have the sprayer myself as well, and there's been times where it clogged up, and even for me, I flush it out all the time. And it's a real pain in the ass to have to deal with a little part that clogged up. So I like to have a new one and pop it in there. That one you have now, one thing we'll use is like a compressor. Try to blow on it, try to blast whatever's in there, try to clear it up. But basically, yeah, it's not spraying even because of that nozzle. And one thing I suggest for sure, get a couple extra ones. Always look at the pattern. It's good you're looking at the pattern. You notice, like, 'cause sometimes customers just push the button and don't even look at the shirt. And don't realize that there's a whole bunch of dry spots that didn't get sprayed. So just because it's a preaching machine doesn't mean it's always gonna be perfect. So it's good that you're checking that pattern, but it's definitely going to be your nozzle. Just get another one and you'll get a nice spray pattern.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Our pleasure. All right. So here's what we're going to do. That's all we have time for today for Q&A. I hope everybody got a ton of value out of Edsel's coaching here over the last, I don't know, what has it been, 35 minutes? No, closer to 40, including Q&A. Edsel also just put his email in the chat. So if you want it, it's in there. This video will be available on YouTube in probably a couple of weeks. But the intent is, I know everybody can't be here and I want to make it available for folks, but I really want to build a live community for people who can be here. You can join from your phone too, even if you're just listening on in the background. But we will be posting them and have been on YouTube, and last week's will be going live there shortly. But I got a special announcement for everybody here today. Did anybody on this call go to the webinar in December? And if you did you love it? Because we had raving reviews about that webinar. And just so happens, we are going to be doing one of those every season. And right now is the first time that we're actually announcing that we are doing another one of those, our spring version, Creators Bootcamp Spring 2021, on April 10th. Okay. You guys are going to be the first one to see the video. Mauricio is going to show you here in a second, but we are doing another Creators Business Bootcamp, which is a free registration, 6 hours long on Saturday, April 10th. And so Mauricio, could you show everybody here, give everybody a little sneak peek of what this is going to look like with that video? The goal here, if you didn't go to the last one, is we give, as a part of our community, we give people free value and free access. We're bringing in billionaire entrepreneur Jesse Itzler. If you don't know who he is, look him up on Instagram. The dude's one of the most dynamic communicators on the planet. And the guy, like, I would die on a hill for that guy. Let's just say that. Like, he is a role model for people like myself. And we're going to be bringing in a hot lineup of speakers for the day to give you information and tools, tips, and tricks to help you scale that business across a gamut of different concepts. So as of right now, that webinar registration is officially live, and I'll post a link here in the chat in a minute. In fact, actually, let me go ahead and just do that right there. You can go ahead and copy and paste that into your browser, and that will take you to the free event registration. But this is going to be a 6-hour live event on Saturday, April 10th. We're going to cover business operations. We're going to cover marketing strategy. Yours truly will be delivering some absolute fire tips and tricks for you to go and scale your company through acquisition and customer retention efforts. Victor's going to be talking about a handful of topics, and then Jesse Itzler is going to be coming in too. And we're also going to be doing live Q&A with all of our keynote speakers. And I'm probably going to be announcing another 1 or 2 additional high caliber keynote speakers as well. So Saturday, April 10th, 6 hours, 10 a.m. Pacific to 4 p.m. Pacific. We are going to be bringing the freaking heat. And there will probably be there will probably be 3,000 to 4,000 people there concurrently at the same time. So it is going to be a vibrant, a high energy event where we're going to be bringing you guys value. So click on the link. I just posted it in the chat section, creators.omniprintonline.com/2021. That is going to take you straight to the registration page. And after you submit your information, it's going to offer you a VIP ticket upgrade. Here's what that is for those of you who didn't go. Getting a VIP ticket upgrade, which is $97, that is going to give you live Q&A access with all of the keynote speakers after every session. And in addition to that, you're also automatically going to be entered into a raffle to win a $35,000 free jet TX Plus. It's either Plus or TX. I think it's Plus. Mauricio, can you fact check me on that? It says there on the actual page, but it's a $35,000 package that you will be entered into to win for free. If that's not enough, we're also going to be giving you away a bunch of other crap too, like one-on-one weekly coaching sessions with the OmniPrint executive team to walk you through for 60 minutes full attention through your business strategy. And so there's a lot of cool stuff. Look, we had 50% of people who came to the last event all wanted to upgrade to VIP during the event because the experience for VIP members is second to none. It's only $97. You're going to be there for 6 hours and you're going to leave with enough value to 10x that the next day. So make sure to go sign up. Could not be more pumped. And look, that's it for today. We got another one. It is every week, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be bringing you live coaching for all of your free jet products. So look, that's all I got, guys. Again, if you got value out of this, give Edsel some love in the chat, and we will see you guys next week. See you guys.